folks, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Natasha and I do book things here. Today's video is my first wrap-up of 2018 and that is my January reading wrap-up. I read a total of 12 books this month along with 2 more that I want to talk about. I tend to ramble a lot when wrapping up books, so I'm going to get right into my stats this year. So as mentioned, I read a total of 12 books this month. That equals out to 4,409 pages. Divide that by 31, I read an average of 142 pages a day. Typically that number is around 200 pages a day or 210. I think it's a little bit lower because I'm trying my best to read a little bit slower, to annotate the books that I am reading, and then I also didn't listen or finish any audiobooks this month, so I just couldn't find one that I was like really into and like I just wasn't in the mood. I had a couple books that were very close to 500 pages. One was at 496 and one was at 497, and quite frankly I'm counting them as tomes, so whatever. So this month was incredibly successful for ratings. I actually didn't have any 1-star or 2-star books at all. I only had 2 3-star books. I had 6 4-star books, and then I had 4 5-star books. Kind of did all of the math together because I kind of want to give like a rating for my month to find out like which month of the year I picked good books. I don't know. Whatever. So I added all those up and divided them by 12. My overall rating for the month was a 4.16. Across the board, really good stuff this month. So I'm going to make a little graph here. I'm going to include all of my page numbers. Also, I want to show you guys the genres that I read. Let me see. I read mostly contemporaries and thrillers. I did read 2 short story collections, which is rare for me. I don't typically like reading them, but there were 2 this month. And then I do want to show you guys my publication dates, because that's actually something that I find really fascinating when people show that in their videos. Any sort of like new releases that they're reading, sort of the years that they read. I'll put up mine. I did read 4 2018 releases in January, which I consider pretty good. I do want to try to read 3 new releases each month, but I kind of got lucky with that 4th one. And then I had 2 2017 releases and things as far back as 1974 and 1977. So pretty interesting range of stuff. I read 7 books by female authors, 1 by a mix, I believe, of all female authors, but I don't want to like, you know, it's a mix of people. I don't want to like gender them. And then 4 books by males. So it's a pretty interesting sort of info thing there. I'm gonna get right into the books. Even though I didn't have any 1 or 2-star books this month, I did have 2 DNFs. If you know me, you'll know that like I'm not somebody who typically DNFs books. It's not something that I like to do. I typically like to see something right through to the end, but I decided in 2018 that I don't want to invest my time in a book that I know I'm not gonna like, or I know that it's just like really is bugging me, or I'm really struggling to read when I have so many other things I want to read. That's kind of how I ended up with 2 DNFs. As you guys know, I have my TBR star jars here where I do pick out books for the month to read. I picked out 4 last month and I did start all 4 books. I finished 2 and then I am DNFing 2. So I'm going to talk about my DNFs first because why not? So the first one that I DNF'd was Running in Heels by Anna Max. Not my thing at all. Not at all what I expected. This is a contemporary book where I think it's mostly like friendship drama. Honestly, I think I got 47 pages in and I couldn't do it anymore. So in the first 9 pages there were so many references by male characters to women's appearance. Like she looks like a sausage stuffed in a wedding dress, but she weighs 120 pounds, and I'm like, whoa. Insulted. It just was bad. The language I didn't like. Set in the UK humor, which I don't like British humor, no offense, but like I don't like it. And I didn't know that going in. And it's written in like 2002. It shows that it's kind of written in 2002, and it was just the language and the characters that I couldn't get behind, and I was rolling my eyes every like 2 sentences, and I just went, I don't need to give this my time. So this is a DNF because my used bookstore will take back used books in exchange for like coffee credits kind of thing. You basically will build up like a tab. You can use it for more used books, or you can use it for like the coffee and drinks that they have there. And so I'm turning this into a latte. Then the other one that I sadly am DNFing, which sucks because I wanted to like this and I wanted to finish it. That is The Luminaries by Eleanor Canton. This is a beautiful book. I love the cover and I wish I could keep it for like just the spine, but like I was just so bored. This is historical fiction, and like, to me, I read 80 some pages I think before I DNF'd it, and I fell asleep like 3 times in the tub trying to read it. And it was one of those books where it took 80 pages for the man to walk like 3 steps into a room. Like it was just, it's too slow for me, and like I'll be the first to admit that like I'm just not smart enough to read this book to fully grasp like the complexity that is this novel. Apparently all the characters that are in there are based on the astrological like horoscope signs, and the chapters equal out to like this mathematical algorithm. I'm just not that smart. Like there's times where I want to be smart and I'll read a book and I'll go, ooh, I feel so intelligent. And then there's times where I'm like, nope, not my thing. And that was this. This is going in my to turn into coffee pile as well. So moving on to the 12 books that I did finish this month, I'm going to go from my 3 stars up to my 5 stars. The first 3-star book of the month was a 2018 release, and that is The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. Was a 3-star to me just because it wasn't exactly what I expected. I recently hauled this and I said that I thought it was going to be more of a home invasion, which truly does scare me, and I wanted a book that like actually scared me a little bit. It was less of that and more of like a psychological thriller. I did really like how we learned about the main character and like her progression through her agoraphobia. I thought that was really excellently done. There's a couple scenes in this that do kind of like kind of get you a little bit going. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of wanted more like eek eek murder and like a little bit more like scary things going on. I don't know, for me I was kind of secretly hoping there'd be a little bit more chase scenes and more like threats from the outside world, if that makes sense. But one thing I will say about this though is that it does move very quickly. So this is like a 400-page book, but it does move quite quickly because the chapters are really tiny. I feel like this would be really good for somebody who wants like a thriller but doesn't want to be scared too badly. This should be a good one. Next is my other 3-star book, and that one was Nice Try, Jane Sinner. So this was kind of a struggle for me to rate between a 3 and a 4. I did end up rating it a 3. Again, just sort of comparing it to the other stuff that I read this month. Like that's kind of sometimes how I have to base my star ratings, because I'm the kind of person that's like 5 stars everywhere, woo! But in actuality, I think I like this a little bit less than I thought I did. This follows the story of Jane Sinner, who is a high school girl. She's around the age of like 17, 18. Gets expelled from her high school and then goes to like a community college to finish her courses. While she's there, she decides to do this like game show kind of thing, almost like Big Brother, where she moves into like almost like a dorm house. The game kind of happens from there and whatever. There are a couple things that I liked about this, and then a bunch of things that I didn't. Love that it's set in Canada. There are so many like Canadian references, like Tim Hortons and just like, I don't know, little things like that where like I could definitely picture myself in the environment. Also brought me right back to my university days where like we had those houses where 12 people lived in them, and there was like the drama like of like, oh, like how dare you steal my yogurt out of my fridge, like stuff like that. I didn't care for the format of this book. This is told in diary sort of format, and I didn't feel like it worked very well for the book. Parts of it worked, and I feel like if it was more of a narrative and then also some diary entries, it would have worked a lot better. Jane's character, but I was hyped up again to believe that like she was going to be really sort of like aggressive and funny, when in actuality I read her literally as me. When I saw like sort of review after review saying that like she's kind of got this wit and hardness about her, I'm like, okay, give me something that's harder than me. But when really like she speaks exactly like I do. I don't know, overall I liked it enough to give it a 3. And I just love the fact that it was set in Canada. I didn't even know that this was a Canadian author or set in Canada until I started reading it, so like that was a pleasant surprise. I liked it enough. I did think it was interesting though to have like a YA book set in sort of like a college setting. Overall, probably more of a 3.5. One of the TBR picks that like again was a book I probably wouldn't have read this month at all, and that is You Are Here by Jennifer E. Smith. This is a tiny sort of like quick read road trip novel. I'm not gonna lie, I did judge the cover and think, oh, this is probably gonna be like but it was actually really, really good. For a road trip book, I like this one because they didn't do too much. They didn't go too many places, which I feel like a lot of novels try to like pack too much road trip into a book. You don't really build character very well when you're going to all these different places, right? This one was really good, and I really, really liked sort of the family drama aspect of it. I don't have too much more to say about that. It was really cute, so I gave it a 4. Next I read Where'd You Go, Bernadette by Maria Semple, and this was really interesting. Yeah, I love it when I read a book and I'm like, oh, there's more to it than I thought. So I don't even know how to describe this, really. So this follows the story of a 15-year-old named Bee, and she's figuring out sort of like where her mother went, and that's how you go into the book. You know that she's sort of following her mom and what happens. And basically her mother, Bernadette, has anxiety, a little bit of agoraphobia. It's weird that I read 2 books about agoraphobia in 1 month. I see a lot of like weird connections to the book that I read this month. She has social anxiety, a little bit of agoraphobia, quite a few different undiagnosed mental illness. Like, this is a really accurate representation of a lot of different mental illnesses sort of overlapping in one character. It follows her looking through emails and letters and different characters' point of view and communication with her mother to find out sort of where she goes. And I actually really like that. It kind of felt in a way like a mixed media book without it being like, I don't know, like newspaper articles and stuff like that. Like, you're kind of jumping from an email to a letter to like a school notice to like another email to it was really, really, really cool. I loved the format of this. I didn't know that going into it that it was going to be quite like that. The only main issue that I had with this that didn't make it like a 5-star book was that her mental illness was never resolved. They at some point in the book try to sort of get her some help, but it just never felt like resolved to me, and so it wrapped up in a bow, but then I'm like, okay, but this woman is still sort of dealing with these issues like underneath this sort of ending. That makes any sense without spoiling the book at all. I don't know. If you've read this, please let me know sort of how you like the ending. Let me know if you sort of agree with me on that. Next is a short story collection that I am so happy that I read, and that is Strange Weather by Joe Hill. 4 sort of novellas, like they're short stories, but they're, you know, it's pretty long. This is a 400-page book, so each story is about 100 pages. So all the stories in this are very different, but each single one has a connection to weather in some sort of way, which is really interesting. The first one had to do with like thunderstorms. The second one had to do with a wildfire. These are not spoilers, by the way, because it feels like the weather is just in the background. The third one has a cloud, and then the fourth one has rain. Okay, like I need to actually make a Stephen King Sunday. This is by Joe Hill. For those of you who don't know, that's Stephen King's son, and I feel like I want to dedicate a whole Stephen King Sunday to talking about just this book, because each short story needs to be discussed further, and I need to have like an actual discussion and spoil things and talk about the things that happen in these stories, because I was completely moved by 3 of the 4. And then one in particular called Loaded actually was the most horrifying work of fiction that I've ever read. It is true horror to me, and I was just like blown away by that fucking story. Like, it was just whoop, like amazing. I almost can't even talk about any of the stories because I want to do like a more in-depth video. Overall, I gave this a 4. I think if you want to be like actually truly horrified by one short story, pick this up and read Loaded. It is amazing. So yeah, do recommend, highly recommend. Like that a lot. Next book that I gave a 4 this month was Carrie by Stephen King. I do have a whole entire Stephen King Sunday where I talk about this book, so I'm not going to talk about it here. But I read it, I liked it, I have a full review, I gave it a 4. The next book that I gave a 4 to was Meet Cute, and everyone has been talking about this book lately for good reason. This is a short story collection of meet cute stories where, you know, people meet and it's adorable. 14 different short stories in this, and I did rate them all individually to kind of make up my rating for the book, but the ones that I gave a 5-star to, if you have this book, and that is Print Shop, I gave a 5, Click, I gave a 5, Oomph, I gave a 5. The Dictionary of You and Me, The Unlikelihood of Falling in Love, and Say Everything. Those are the ones that I personally liked. So if you read this, let me know if you agree. So the last 4 of the month is Stephen King's The Shining. Read it, liked it quite a bit. I will definitely have a Stephen King Sunday all about The Shining. There's so many things, again, to talk about, like fun facts to talk about this book, why Stephen King wrote it, all of that stuff. I just liked it a lot, and definitely in comparison to the movie The Shining, the book is so much better, in my opinion. Yeah, and Stephen King agrees. This follows the story of Jack Torrance, his wife Wendy, and their kid Danny. So they're going up to the Overlook Hotel to basically be the caretakers for the entire winter, and the hotel is spooky. The hotel has some history, and it messes with Jack's mind, and it messes with Danny. Danny's a weird kid, he's got some weird shit going on. Wendy's kind of like an abused woman who has her own voice and stuff. The hotel messes with them all, and Jack goes a little kooky, and that's basically The Shining, but I liked it, so I gave it a 4. Alright, so now moving into 5-star books. The first 5-star book of the month was one that like completely blew me away. I love this, and more people should be talking about this book because it is so freaking good. That is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. This follows the story of Frances, who is a girl who does like fan art for a podcast that she follows, and she realizes that she knows the person who does the podcast, and they reach out and like make art, and there's a really like awesome friendship there. One thing though that I loved the most about this book was like Frances's mother is the best written like mother character that I've ever read in a book. You know, just sitting there in her unicorn onesie watching Game of Thrones. Like her mother was written very much like my mom, like just a realistic mother. Just the opposite. There is definitely some like parental figures that are in this book that are like just horrible people. Took me through a ride. Like, you love the friendship, you love certain parents, you hate certain parents, you hate the way that this works. It's just, it's very complex, but it feels real. It feels real, it feels diverse, it feels accurate to like just life. This is just a beautiful book, and I think everyone should read this. This is just, I almost want to reread it just now. She wrote this book when she was 23, which I just, that fact, like, my god, like, I write more please, I need more. She has a book I think coming out in 2018 that I need like the second it comes out. But yeah, like, this is just absolutely fantastic. Do suggest it. Read it. It's great. The next 2 books that I gave 5 stars to were part of a series, and I read one, I immediately read the other one, and they're both 5 stars, so I'm kind of going to talk about them together. That is The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torrey, and Do Not Disturb as well. Books are both sort of erotic thrillers, which you may go, what the hell is an erotic thriller? Basically this follows the story of Deanna Madden. She is a cam girl, that's how she makes her money. She's in her apartment with all of her equipment, and she does dirty cam girl stuff. I love that because I have friends who are into sex work, and I feel like the cam girl part of it was portrayed so perfectly and so accurately that I feel like she did a lot of research into that, into like how the cam girl world works. Deanna Madden has murderous tendencies, and so she locks herself in her apartment at night so that she doesn't murder people, basically, and these books just follow that. I'm not going to at all talk about this one because it would be kind of a spoiler for what happens in this one. But yeah, I love this. I do have the 3rd one, and it is in my sort of like TBR for February. Kind of had to give myself a break because I didn't want to read all 3 and then not have any more book to read. It's just good, okay? Like, it's the best written like thriller that also has some like sexy aspects to it that I've ever read, and yeah, both of these were like immediate 5 stars. And the 3rd one's probably a 5 star too. So yeah, these are absolutely fantastic. 10 out of 10. Do recommend. And then the last 5-star that I read this month is a beautiful book. I absolutely loved it. That is Love, Hate, and Other Filters by Samir Ahmed. And I was reading it, I believe, when I first talked about it in my haul. And I said, oh, this is going really, really cute. And don't get me wrong, this book is definitely cute, but as I expected in that video, it definitely went into a darker turn in sort of like the middle of this book. Right around the middle mark is when it starts to get a little bit more serious in what happens and what's the major event that takes place in this. It follows the story of Maya, who is an American-born Indian Muslim teenager, and she's dealing with a lot of pressures of trying to figure out what school she's going to. She's very much into film and making movies and cinematography and that kind of thing, but she doesn't feel like her parents are going to sort of let her pursue that. Also feeling a lot of pressure from them for trying to marry or find like a proper Muslim boy that like they approve of for her, and so she does have a couple of different love interests throughout the book, and I feel like she just handles them really well. They're very accurate. There's a couple love interests, but like they are managed really well. Like I don't know how else to describe that. Her emotions feel real and they're written about in a very real way. So yeah, she's dealing with that. Then at the same time, you have sort of like a second plot that takes place where it's this build up for this major horrible event that takes place. She's sort of left to deal with how that affects her family and how that affects her. She goes through a lot of Islamophobia, which is heartbreaking, and I cried several times in this book. I cried twice. Makes me emotional talking about it. It's just very emotional for me to read. There's some violence that takes place, some like just very scary moments for her family and how they recover from that. And then also there is sort of like the love interest that plays out and her life that plays out. This is just beautiful, okay? Yeah, this is a definite 5-star. I absolutely love it. I do suggest that everyone goes and reads this. This is beautiful. So yeah, I definitely consider both of these books sort of on the same wavelength. This is Black Lives Matter movement and how a community comes together after that. This talks heavily about Islamophobia and how that affects that community as well. So I feel like both of these books, read both of these, basically. They're a little bit different in which community they talk about, but they're both very important, and both stories I feel like need to be told. So definitely pick this up. It's beautifully written. So yeah, those are all the books that I read in the month of January. I read clearly some like awesome stuff, so I have a lot of things there for you guys to check out and read. I know my wrap-ups are super long, so if you made it to the end, thank you. I'm not going to keep you guys too much longer. I hope everyone is doing good. Until my next video, I will talk to all of you soon. Bye!